Hey Neppers, it's me. This video going over the upcoming 5-star artifact selector in Epic 7. There are a lot of artifacts to go over, so not gonna be around the bush, let's get started right away. Now originally, I was gonna go over all the artifacts. That's gonna take way too long, and you don't want to be here for an hour doing this, and I don't either, so just going over some of the highlights. So no collab artifacts, as 0% chance that they will be on Selector, and the limiteds I'll go over at the end of the video quickly, even though I doubt they'll be there either. So warrior artifacts, there are two big standouts. One of them is going to be Golden Rose. This is Abigail's artifact, the flavor of the week artifact, I should say. It is really good on your health scaling bruisers, as it gives just flat damage increase when above 50% health, and gives some lifesteal when below 50% health, which means it's a very versatile artifact. You probably know that some players have opted to use this on your Lighthouse Shermia in lieu of having a lifesteal set. That being said, a fair warning. This one at plus 15, because this again has two scaling stats, means that it's kind of mediocre, I would say. Definitely, if you have an artifact that isn't quite as good as this one, but still okay. But that one is at like plus 30. Having that one at plus 30 is probably better than this one at plus 15. It's debatable whether or not you should have multiple copies of this one versus one copy for one unit, as there are a lot of warriors that would like to use this. However, me personally, I don't see the value of just having one singular copy of this versus some other artifacts in the game where you could also get one singular copy for. That being said, this is one of the newer artifacts, and one that I suspect that a lot of players don't currently have, and this is the one that you have to get. Getting your first copy here is not the worst deal in the world. The other artifact we're looking at though is going to be Sacred Scythe. Now this is one of the older artifacts in the game. It's like Golden Rose for your attack scalers, so it gives an attack boost and also some lifesteal when below 50% health. This is notable too, as this is one of the artifacts that you cannot get in Story Summon, because Ravi does not have her own side story. Very sad. Also, the Powder Shop rotation that just had this artifact, well, it passed not too long ago. So if you're thinking about doing it that way, you're going to be waiting for quite a long time. Another notable feature here is that this happens to be Lone Crescent Bologna's best in, well, I should say only in slot, because you need this artifact to actually use it effectively at all. And Lone Crescent Bologna has risen as the premier counter to ML Landy. Also, because it only has one scaling stat, which is the lifesteal, it is actually pretty decent at plus 15. Again, of course, always better at high imprint levels, but it doesn't really feel that bad to only have a base copy. And without taking too much time, Elizabeth's Wrath, pretty good on Alencia herself, probably her best in slot, at least mathematically, in my opinion. Durando sees some play on Dark Corvus and Assassin Gachucha. Not the best overall, but decent at one copy. Snow Crystal, not bad on Shu, and also can open up some interesting anti-cleave playstyles for Holiday Euphine. Night Artifacts. Now, when we get to Night Artifacts, I should say that most Knights want to use a 4-star artifact called Aureus, and some of them might use Adamant Shield. That being said, a lot of Night Artifacts will be very niche in the applications, so let's get started with Ancient Dragon's Legacy. Really only used on Fire Lilius to counter Lua. Really the only way that she sees play at all. One copy is enough, so we need this one copy. This is your chance to get it. Again, also available in Story Summon. Albus Ritual Sword. Best in slot for not only one of the best units in the game right now, ML Landy, also one of the best other units in Bellion. Pretty good, also a plus 15. You do the 15 to 20% boost from 15 to 30 seems like it's a small amount, but remember, it is for each target hit. So let's say 3 targets are hit, it's going to be 15 times 3 versus 20 times 3. Not 20, well, it's like 20% 3 times, whatever that maths out to be. So there is a little bit more of a discrepancy than it appears to be. That being said, again, perfectly viable at plus 15, and having 2 copies of plus 15 for those 2 units is going to do wonders for any PvP account. Definitely one of the best artifacts to pick up if you need a copy of this. And again, rapid fire for the artifacts that I think are notable but don't need that much talking about. Holy Sacrifice, okay tech for some things, like some people using Holy Stack Arrowwell to fight those fast Strazes. However, an artifact you need to be a plus 30, and Spear of a New Dawn, basically required for Senya for the most part. Really nice to have a plus 30, but not completely required, but it is a nice bonus. Now we have the Thief artifacts. These are kind of interesting. Now, these do have a backup 4-star artifact called Moonlight Dreamblade, which is good on a lot of the meta thieves right now. But let's get started with Alexa's Basket. So, used on some Rands in Cleave. I do think RNL is better. We'll get to that in a little bit. But also used on Arbiter Vildred, and he's not really used, so that doesn't really count. But is used on another unit, Tempest Surin, who has seen a huge resurgence recently. Now, is that going to last? I don't know. However, for the moment, because it is the best in slot, at least for the lifesteal build, Basket is a good artifact. And probably will always be a good artifact. It's not quite the ubiquitous, gonna be used all the time right now. However, nice to have a copy. Yes, 30 to 40% chance from 15 to max is kind of a big deal, but you get what you can get. Goblet of Oath is probably going to be Para's best in slot, so if you use her a lot, you might want to pick this one up. She does have, again, substitutes though, like RNL is pretty good on her, and just like other Thief artifacts, maybe you can use also. But yeah, best in slot, and the effectiveness increase from 15, which is going to be 22.5 to 30, isn't that big of a deal, so perfectly fine at base. RNL, we talked about this a lot, now here it is. In my opinion, the most toxic artifact in the entire game. Rand's best in slot, Para's best in slot, which is being used on Guild Wars defense. Just an extremely tilting artifact. Now, it's 15% chance for the extra attack at plus 15 and 20 at plus 30. That might seem like a small amount, but what he wants is to proc maybe multiple times in one turn. You know, that extra percentage, when you're doing it multiple times, is going to make a difference. So, pretty good at plus 15, bonkers at plus 30. Storm Sword is another artifact that is a tech-type artifact used on some anti-cleave T service, the ones that will go really fast, used on some ML Selene, of course used on Grass Selene here, used on Winter. Right now, besides T-Surin, a lot of units that are kind of hard to use, and traditionally, this has been the case for this artifact. On paper, is pretty good. However, the units that want to use it have been kind of tricky to draft overall, and that remains the case right now. I would say also that it has 2 scaling stats, and they scale pretty highly with more copies, and one of them is the actual chance to proc the attack buff. So this is basically a plus 30 or bust type artifact. Shepherd of the Hollow is probably Savior Aiden's and Vended Violet's best in slot artifact. Again, Moonlight Dreamblade does exist. Savior Aiden does have her own exclusive artifact she can use for herself. It is nice that this one has a 20% evasion bonus just at base, so a plus 15, you still get that. You just miss out on some more damage. Now, technically, it only has 1 scaling stat. Just the damage increases as health decreases. So I basically hit the average between the two. So at level 1, it is 6 and 12. That's 9. And at it's 18. So it will be whatever the middle of that is. I don't know what it is off the top of my head. You can do the math yourself, right? But whatever that is, that's the damage you're basically losing overall if he has a plus 15 versus max. And in my opinion, there aren't really any other thief artifacts that are really worth looking at. The only one maybe would be Double-Edged Crescent, where, again, you do get the evasion boost right away, and it is probably best in slot for Counter Kairon. Counter Kairon right now is not the best unit overall. However, he's always a threat to come back for his anti-cleave ways. Now we have Ranger artifacts, and unfortunately, they are under the big shadow of one called Guiding Light. And why? Because a lot of Rangers need Guiding Light to actually take a turn. Unfortunately, also, a lot of other Rangers that don't use Guiding Light also need other limited limited artifacts to use, like Caesarea and P-Flan really want Star of the Deep Sea, and there aren't really any other like major big hitters in the Ranger artifact category, and therefore I would suggest not picking a Ranger artifacts. However, there are a couple of them that you might want to consider, you know, just in case you have all the other ones. One of them is going to be Bloodstone. This was used sometimes in PvP. I do think it's too hard to use right now. You need way too good stats to really get big use out of it. However, in PvE, it is a nice one to have, even at plus 15. Song of Stars is probably the queen of PvE Ranger artifacts. Getting that bonus target damage is very nice, especially because if you have Iseria, who's one of the strongest PvE units in the game, this is going to be something you want to pick up if you don't have a copy and you have the other things, of course. And finally, I would say that Unseen Observer is one you want to look at too. You'll get it because it's unseen. You want to look. Oh, never mind. But if you have Flan or Astromancer Elena, you basically need this artifact. Otherwise, you can't use them. So a requirement to use a couple of units. Now, are these units really good right now? No. So do keep that in mind. But if you want to use them, this is where you get this. Now, like other artifacts, mages have a 4-star that can be used by a lot of them called Tagahel's Ancient Book. That being said, there are 2 mage artifacts we want to look at here more closely. One of them is going to be Abyssal Crown, one of the more toxic artifacts in the game along with RNL. Really only used right now on Politis. Usable on other units too that do some AoE, but Politis is definitely the one where it sees the most usage at the moment. Okay, plus 15, definitely better at high levels, of course. The other one's going to be Bloody Rose, which is going to be used by some effectiveness Zeos. The effectiveness boost is actually really big. This is going to be the difference maybe between debuffing a dedicated ER or not. Like, a Zeo on effectiveness with this artifact can debuff Sage Balls. And my Sage is like 300 ER. So, yeah, there is that going for it. Also, the Vampirism, I think, is an underrated bonus too. As sometimes in like not quite cleave matches, maybe you draft your Zeo as a contester instead, can help you prolong your survivability a little bit. So definitely a nice pickup if you want to use it for that. That being said, some other ones quickly you might want to look at are Fairy Tale for a Nightmare. Now this is limited, so probably not going to be on the list, but if it is, this is best in slot for Archdemon Shadow and also for Solitaria, and arguably for Aria too. Just a very strong artifact overall for a lot of mages. Finally, we have the Solvier artifacts. I do think that compared to each other, these are the most balanced ones overall. Of course, the most versatile one is Guardian Ice Crystals, which is a collab artifact which you will not be able to get from the Selector. So let's get started with Celestine. For a long time, this was seen as kind of the mediocre one. These days, however, very strong on things like Shuna, Sharoon. There are just a lot of Soul Reavers that have to use their base attack a lot more often now and don't really get as much benefit from using their non-attack skills quite all the time. I would say that this is kind of like middling overall though to pick, so just be wary. Rod of Amaryllis has been seen as a very strong artifact, especially on units like DN. Now, at the moment, not a lot of Soul Weavers really use this, at least compared to like other artifacts that they can use. Mainly because Ice Crystals is just way too strong, I should say. So we don't have Ice Crystals. This is not a bad pickup. Just be warned that I think a lot of players are looking at this and thinking back to like the good old days when this was like the only Soviet artifact you can get. And I think, times have changed. Still very good, just not amazing like it used to be. Shamadra's Staff is one that is interesting because it basically makes a playstyle in your ER stacking. Now, ER stacking is not that good right now. It might come back in the future. The season's ending soon, and maybe some changes will be made to make ER better. But if you do want to do that playstyle, having a copy of this is not going to be that bad for you. Stellar Harpa is Rowanna's best in slot, and Rowanna has become a premier Soul Weaver to use these days because it's not a cleanse every single time, like once per turn. It's every single time that she is hit, she has a chance to cleanse the debuff. It is only one debuff per ally, but sometimes just cleansing a key debuff is enough. So something to consider here if you use Rowanna quite a bit. And if you do a lot of RTA, you probably do. And that's it. If you have any questions about any of the artifacts that I mentioned or did not mention, just leave a comment below, ask you a question. I'll be sure to answer it, I hope, before the Selector is up. Anyway, it's been a good one. Nep out.